Trade unions are once again in the spotlight as some believe they are still in a fight for relevance. The recent SAFTU Congress displayed fractured relations within the movement, and some saying there might be these might be a threat to its survival. At the same time, Sibanye-Stillwater workers have downed tools, with some camping outside the union buildings demanding a salary increase. Of course, this is happening in the gold sector. Earlier this month, we saw ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa being whisked away before being able to address workers at the COSATU's May Day rally in the Northwest. Now, some are arguing that the labour movement appears to be weakened, and while, of course, the unions are still trying to remain relevant. Let's look at all of this now with Dr Ebrahim Harvey, who's a political analyst, former unionist and author. Dr. Harvey, thank you so much for your time. First of all, I'm keen to find out from you about recent developments around the SAFTU Congress. Lots of tensions, membership losses, slates, suspensions and counter-suspensions ahead of Congress. What do you make of what happened there?
Oh, it was terrible, man. It's unprecedented, because, one expected, after, the expulsion of Harvey and NUMSA from COSATU, that SAFTU, I attended its launch, was something that was going to happen that would make a significant difference. And down the line, I was looking at a reunification of COSATU and SAFTU, which is what I believe should happen, And just 2-3 weeks ago, I had to call Beggy for something else, the COSATU General Secretary. He said, Ibrahim, we want that unity. The thing is, who's going to take the initiative to do it, to set it in motion? But a very serious setback for SAFTU unity and broader working class unity, and certainly for the relationship between SAFTU and COSATU. What happened, at the SAFTU Congress is really very, very unfortunate. And it's been coming on for a long time, for a couple of years, and I've been writing a lot about this. SAFTU born, following it a lot. And I can tell you, the fact that they wanted to suspend Harvey, the timing is very interesting. You must look at it. This attempt to suspend him, we don't know what the details are, and whether he was guilty or not, but it comes just before weeks, 6-7 weeks before the Congress. I found that timing very, very interesting. But more than anything else, you'll see the media reports, they say throughout the SAFTU Congress, they were calling for people who are wanting Harvey out of the way. It echoes the fact that there is deepening tensions, and I know both of them. Between Jim and Harvey, your biggest problem in SAFTU is not the lack of unity among the affiliates, etc. I even think that you could have a reunification between SAFTU and COSATU. The biggest problem in SAFTU is the relationship between Harvey and Jim. And this is what brings SAFTU back. You can see the Socialist Workers' Revolutionary Party, which, founded by NUMSA largely, never participated in last year's election. The election before, Harvey was not part of it. They were trounced, terrible hiding they got in that election, sad reflection, and probably why they did not participate. And there's talk that Harvey's been opposed to this Workers' Party that was formed, yet it is a Congress resolution of NUMSA that a Workers' Party will be formed. So there's a combination of problems. It's been a long time. This is just a culmination. I think it was a marriage of convenience between Harvey and NUMSA.
And Dr. Harvey, if I may, Dr. Harvey, pardon me, if I may come in there, I'm keen to hear your thoughts then on this, given what you're saying. Would you say that given the tensions and these fractures that we're seeing right now, that this particular federation is finding itself where COSATU was when it turned 30?
Yes, well, this is the reason why it's a very sad moment, is that when SAFTU was formed, there was a lot of euphoria. Let me tell you, I was there at the Congress. Lots of euphoria, and, I still maintain that down the road, they need to find each other, COSATU, and that was the biggest mistake COSATU ever made. How can you go and expel a 300 to 400,000 affiliate, the biggest affiliate? So they made very serious mistakes. But this SAFTU Congress Well, Harvey returns to General Secretary, and it seems, that most of the top positions fall. You can see already it's becoming like the ANC. The media's talking of slates, Harvey's and Jim's slate, which is just a sad reflection of what's happening. It seems the same pattern that we see, the factionalist pattern in the ANC, is playing itself out in SAFTU, really, it's a sad moment, I had hoped that this wouldn't happen, though I'm not totally surprised because that attempt to suspend Harvey, and then the executive turned around and suspended those office bearers were involved in his suspension, just told you, the knives are out, and it's really a very unfortunate development. And from the media reports, you can see tensions were there all the time throughout that SAFTU Congress. And really, it is most unfortunate because it's to do with Harvey and Jim.
And Dr. Harvey, one of the things...
They're unable to bury their differences even in the interest of unity.
Dr. Harvey, pardon me if I may come in there. I'd like us to, I wish we had time to discuss actually what is happening within SAFTU as you talk about that relationship between Irvin, Jim and Harvey now, and I wonder what it looks like going forward. But I'd like us to go to another strike that is another labor matter that is ongoing. That's a strike at Sibanye-Stillwater, of course, in the gold sector. We saw yesterday the Minister of Labour, Tulas, saying that the parties appear to be kind of egotistic and really not wanting to move an inch and calling for them to unite, as we see there's efforts now by the CCMA to do so. So in your experience as a unionist, I wonder, how much of a factor are these egos at play when both parties are sitting at the bargaining table?
Yeah, well, there's often, what you call egos involved in big strikes. And I mean, no doubt the leader of AMCU is a very strong-willed guy, I mean, the management has been saying that from their own reports and surveys and, talking to workers, most of them want to return to work, but they're being held back by the union leadership, But I'll tell you, I mean, really, I think the thing that is the worst to have happened on the side of management was to be fighting over this, 150, 200 Rand difference, when it's a very valid point that the union and broad civil society has raised that the CEO got a package of over 300 million Rand last year. And I think this is what sticks in the minds of those workers. This is probably why they're digging in their heels, because as much as the company is trying to explain away that 300 million Rand, what various contributions made that amount, and so on, and almost to excuse it, I think the workers have a valid, really, a point about hanging on to this demand of 1,000 Rand, especially of what the CEO took home last year.
So when we then look at, what you've just raised around civil society, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this one. Mark Haywood writes that the gap that has been left by the weakening of trade unions has seen the rise of civil society organizations and social movements trying to fight for the plight of workers. Do you agree with that?
No, well, I'll partly agree with it because let me tell you, I've penned many columns and articles. We've had a major decline of civil society from 1994. And in fact, the ANC has played a big part in the weakening of civil society, I believe deliberately, because they thought it would be a thorn in their side. And, if you had a vibrant, strong civil society, keep them on their toes, etc. But there is, I think, Abatlali, in KZN, who's actually 23 activists of Atlali, has been assassinated. I think if you speak about them, and there's perhaps a resurgence to some extent in the townships, of this kind of social movements we had in the 2000s. But I think I'll be very careful to say that there's a huge reawakening, resurgence of social movements, I think it's rather tempered. It's very uneven, but indeed, that is what we need. That is what we need. But remember that trade unions are part of civil society. Trade unions, during the apartheid years, COSATU was the heart of civil society. COSATU was the leader of civil society, so you must not see labor as opposed to labor. Is often, the mainspring of civil society, which is what you've seen, during the apartheid years. It's just a very, very unfortunate thing, really. And I'm worried now that, in fact, NUMSA might, in fact, now seek to leave SAFTU, because they suffered a defeat, in terms of Jim Slate,
Yeah, and Dr. Harvey, while on that then, the slate politics, there's even workers who are upset. I mean, we saw them at the May Day rally who felt like their issues are not being addressed and they now appear to be taking matters into their own hands. How much of these ructions would you say are putting the plight of the workers on the back burner? Is it only about power now and simply not the workers?
Well, workers' issues have been put on the back burner for as long as the ANC is in office, honestly, contrary to what they say about having pro-poor policies. I think that, you will be certainly spot on. And I know both Jim and Harvey. But I'll tell you, and in fact, the General Secretary of COSATU, Beggy, I think there's a lot of, if they are honest with you, there's a lot of egos with each of them to varying degrees. And, if they could just deal with that and temper it, and see the bigger picture, I really think not only would you have, a growing unity within SAFTU, I think it will set the basis for a wider unity, which, as I indicated, Beggy said to me a few weeks ago, we're waiting, we want to reunite with SAFTU.
All right.
So the leadership plays a critical role in the nature of leadership. And I'm afraid to say that the biggest stumbling block now to trade union unity at the moment in this country seems to be amongst the leaders.
Dr. Harvey,
what seems to be happening,
Thank you so much for that. I wish we had more time, lots to talk about, particularly on this union's front, but I do hope we speak again in future as we look at what exactly is going on here. That's Dr. Ebrahim Harvey. He's a political analyst, former unionist and author, certainly talking about, the difficult part that now the unions are finding themselves in.